When did school lunch send everyone to the ER? The smell hit me first, that sickly sweet stench of rotting meat mixed with industrial bleach that made my stomach lurch. I pressed my back against the cafeteria storage room door, holding my breath as I listened to Ms. Rodriguez, our new food service manager, arguing with someone on the phone. Look, Jerry, I told you the chicken was fine, she hissed into her cell. So what if it was a few days past date? Kids these days have weak stomachs. Probably just the flu going around. My hands shook as I held up my phone, recording every word. 43 students. That's how many kids from Jefferson High were currently puking their guts out in hospital beds because of the flu going around. Including my little brother Marcus, who'd been throwing up blood for the past 6 hours. The health inspector won't be back for another month, Rodriguez continued. And even if he does show up early, we've got our arrangement. $2,000 keeps a lot of mouths shut, you know what I'm saying. I almost dropped my phone. $2,000. That's what it cost to poison half my school. It was 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday when everything went to hell. I was in AP chemistry when the first wave of kids started getting sick. Sarah Chen ran out of class with her hand over her mouth. Then Jake Morrison. By the time the dismissal bell rang at 3:15, ambulances were lined up outside like it was some kind of disaster movie. The chicken parmesan special. That's what everyone who got sick had eaten. Including Marcus, who'd been so excited about finally getting to eat the good lunch instead of bringing peanut butter sandwiches from home. Mom had just started her new job at the insurance company, and the extra $40 a week for school lunches felt like a luxury we could finally afford. Now that luxury might kill my 12-year-old brother. Listen, we saved $800 just on this week's poultry order, Rodriguez was saying. The stuff was still cold, mostly. And I pumped it full of enough seasoning to cover any weird taste. These kids eat garbage at home anyway, their parents feed them McDonald's and gas station burritos. They should be grateful for a home-cooked meal. Home-cooked with meat that expired on October 15th. Today was October 22nd. I'd snuck back to school after visiting Marcus in the ICU, where he lay connected to 4 tubes, his normally bright eyes dull and sunken. The doctor said he was one of the worst cases, severe dehydration, blood in his stool, possible kidney damage. A 12-year-old kid who still collected Pokemon cards and asked me to check under his bed for monsters. Besides, Rodriguez laughed, a sound like nails on chalkboard, who's gonna believe a bunch of teenagers over a certified food service professional with 20 years of experience. I've got documentation showing everything was stored properly. Jerry made sure those inspection reports looked perfect. I'd heard enough. My finger was cramping from holding down the record button, but I had what I needed. Evidence of the expired food, the falsified reports, the bribery. Everything that would put this woman behind bars where she belonged. The question now was what to do with it. The school administration? They'd probably just try to cover it up to avoid lawsuits. The police? Maybe, but this felt bigger than just one bad cafeteria manager. No, this needed to be public. Nuclear. The kind of story that would make sure Rodriguez never served food to kids again. As I crept away from the storage room, my mind was already spinning with plans when I heard footsteps echoing down the hallway. Heavy boots on linoleum, definitely not a teacher's soft-soled shoes. I ducked behind the trophy case just as Jerry Hoffman, the district health inspector, rounded the corner. I recognized him from the framed photo in the main office, where he was shaking hands with Principal Matthews at some ribbon-cutting ceremony. Seeing him here after hours, when he wasn't supposed to return for another month according to Rodriguez, made my blood run cold. Maria, you in there? His voice boomed as he knocked on the storage room door. We need to talk. Now. Jerry. Jesus, you scared me. Rodriguez's voice was muffled but panicked. What are you doing here? I thought we agreed. 43 kids, Maria. 40-fucking-3. This was supposed to be small-time stuff. Shaving a few days off expiration dates, maybe fudging some temperature logs. Not a goddamn mass casualty event. I pressed myself tighter against the trophy case, my phone still recording. The battery was at 37%. I prayed it would last. Look, it's handled, Rodriguez said, but I could hear the fear creeping into her voice. The documentation all shows proper storage temperatures. Your inspection report from last month gave us perfect marks. As far as anyone knows, this is just one of those freak contamination things that happens sometimes. One of those freak, are you insane? Hoffman's voice cracked. Channel 7 News is camped outside the hospital. The goddamn CDC is sending investigators from Atlanta. My boss is asking questions I can't answer because apparently 16 kids are in critical condition. 16. Marcus was one of 16 fighting for their lives right now. The Morrison boy went into kidney failure an hour ago, Hoffman continued. Kidney failure, Maria. From your few days past expiration date, chicken. His parents are talking about hiring lawyers. Real lawyers, not some public defender. Jake Morrison. I remembered him running out of chemistry class, hand clamped over his mouth. Star of the debate team, had a full scholarship to Duke lined up. Now his kidneys were shutting down because he'd eaten a $5 school lunch. We stick to the story, Rodriguez said, but her voice wavered. Food was properly stored, properly prepared. Sometimes contamination happens during processing, before it even gets to us. That's what the poultry company is for, liability. The poultry company? Hoffman laughed bitterly. I called them this morning. You want to know what they told me? They told me that batch of chicken was recalled on October 14th, recalled, Maria. There was a fucking recall notice sent to every school district in 3 counties, and somehow you missed it. My hands went numb. A recall. She hadn't just served expired chicken, she'd served recalled, contaminated meat to save money. The recording was getting everything, but I needed to see more. Evidence I could photograph. The recall notice must have gotten lost in the system, Rodriguez stammered. You know how it is with the district email. Half the time those things go straight to spam. Lost in the system. Hoffman's voice was deadly quiet now. Maria, I've been covering for your cost cutting for 8 months. Temperature violations, expired dairy, corners cut on cleaning supplies. But this? This is criminal negligence. Maybe manslaughter if any of these kids die. If any of these kids die. Marcus's pale face flashed through my mind, those 4 tubes snaking into his tiny arms. I had to get closer. I had to see what other evidence was in that room. The storage room door creaked open, and I watched Hoffman storm inside. This was my chance. I slipped from behind the trophy case and crept closer, staying low beneath the cafeteria serving windows. Through the gap under the storage room door, I could see their feet, Rodriguez's white sneakers pacing frantically while Hoffman's black boots stayed planted in one spot. Show me the documentation, he demanded. I heard papers rustling, then Rodriguez's nervous voice, everything's here. Temperature logs showing proper cold storage at 38 degrees. Your inspection report from September 28 giving us an A rating. Purchase orders showing delivery on October 20th, well within safe parameters. October 20th. Hoffman's voice rose. Maria, I was at the hospital 20 minutes ago. The CDC investigators already pulled the delivery truck GPS records. That chicken was delivered on October 14th, the same day as the recall. You've been sitting on contaminated meat for 8 days. My phone buzzed, a text from Mom. Marcus asking for you. Doctor says maybe turning corner but still critical. Where are you? I typed back quickly, school project. Be there soon. Love you both. The lie tasted bitter, but I couldn't leave now. Not when I was this close to getting everything I needed to destroy them both. The GPS records don't mean anything, Rodriguez said, but her voice cracked. Could be a clerical error. The truck makes multiple stops. A clerical error that coincidentally matches the exact day of the recall. Hoffman laughed harshly. And what about the temperature logs, Maria? Because I've got photos from my September inspection right here on my phone. Photos that show your walk-in cooler thermostat reading 46 degrees, not 38. You said those photos would disappear. They were supposed to. But now the FBI is getting involved. Federal charges, Maria. Do you understand what that means? They're going to audit everything, every inspection I've done in the past 2 years, every report I've filed. FBI. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was bigger than I'd imagined. Through the crack under the door, I watched Rodriguez's feet stumble backward. FBI. But you said small violations were normal. You said every school cuts corners. Not like this. Hoffman exploded. Expired milk, maybe. Old bread, fine. But serving recalled chicken that's been sitting at dangerous temperatures for over a week. That's not cutting corners, that's attempted murder. Don't be dramatic, Rodriguez snapped, some of her confidence returning. It's food poisoning. Kids recover from food poisoning. Tell that to the Chin family. Their daughter went into septic shock an hour ago. 15 years old, honor roll student, now on life support because you wanted to save $800. Sarah Chen. The girl who'd run out of chemistry class first. I'd known her since middle school, quiet, brilliant, planning to study medicine at Stanford. Now she was fighting for her life because of Rodriguez's greed. Look, Rodriguez's voice turned pleading, we can fix this. Blame it on the supplier. Say they delivered without proper refrigeration. Your inspection report backs us up, shows our equipment was working fine. My inspection report is falsified, and we both know it. Hoffman's boots moved closer to Rodriguez's sneakers. I took $2,000 to look the other way on minor violations. Not to help you cover up mass poisoning. Then we make it worth your while, Rodriguez said desperately. $5,000. 10. Whatever it takes to make this disappear. Silence stretched between them. My phone battery dropped to 28%, but I kept recording. This was it, the moment that would either damn them both or make Hoffman an accomplice to attempted bribery. Finally, Hoffman spoke, his voice cold as winter. Maria, in about 6 hours, federal investigators are going to tear this place apart. They're going to find everything, the real temperature logs, the recall notices, the purchase records. And when they do, I'm not going down with you. What are you saying? Rodriguez's voice turned sharp, dangerous. I'm saying I kept copies of everything. The real inspection reports showing your violations. Photos of the expired inventory. Even recordings of our conversations about the money. Hoffman's boots shifted on the linoleum. Insurance policy, you understand. I never expected it to go this far. My blood turned to ice water. If Hoffman had been recording their conversations, he might have evidence going back months. Evidence that could save Marcus and all the other kids, but also evidence that proved this conspiracy ran deeper than just one corrupt cafeteria manager. You recorded me. Rodriguez's voice cracked like a whip. You son of a bitch, we had a deal. The deal was for minor infractions. Not for turning Jefferson High into a goddamn crime scene. Something crashed inside the storage room, sounded like Rodriguez had swept papers off a shelf. Through the gap under the door, I watched her white sneakers pace frantically back and forth. 47 now, Hoffman continued quietly. 47 kids in the hospital. Channel 7 just reported that 3 more students came forward. They ate the chicken yesterday but didn't get sick until this morning. Delayed onset means the contamination was severe. Yesterday. My stomach clenched as I realized Rodriguez had served the same batch of recalled chicken for multiple days. How many more kids were going to get sick? How many more families would get that terrifying phone call from the school nurse? We're done, Maria. I'm calling my lawyer, then I'm calling the FBI myself. Maybe if I cooperate fully, they'll go easy on me. 20 years until retirement, I'm not throwing that away for your get-rich-quick scheme. Wait. Rodriguez's voice turned deadly calm. Just wait a goddamn minute, Jerry. You think you can just throw me under the bus and walk away clean? I've got records too. Bank deposits showing exactly when your consulting fees hit your account. Text messages where you told me which violations to hide and how to hide them. The storage room fell silent except for the hum of the industrial refrigerators. When Hoffman spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper, you wouldn't. Try me. We're both going down, or neither of us is. Your choice. I pressed closer to the door, my phone screen showing 24% battery. I needed to hear Hoffman's response, but footsteps echoed from the main hallway, the night custodian making his rounds. If Mr. Garcia found me here, this would all be over. 9 p.m., Rodriguez continued. Meet me at the Denny's on Route 47. We're going to get our stories straight, and then we're going to weather this storm together. Because Jerry, if I go down for this, I'm taking you, Principal Matthews, and anyone else who knew about our arrangement with me. Principal Matthews knew. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the phone. How high up did this corruption go? Matthews doesn't know anything, Hoffman said quickly. Rodriguez laughed, a bitter, ugly sound. Really? Then who do you think approved the budget cuts that forced me to buy cheaper ingredients? Who signed off on reducing health inspection frequency from monthly to quarterly? Matthews has been pushing cost savings for 2 years, and he didn't ask too many questions about how I was achieving them. The custodian's footsteps were getting closer. I had maybe 30 seconds before Mr. Garcia rounded the corner and spotted me crouched by the storage room. But Rodriguez was still talking, revealing the scope of a cover-up that apparently reached the highest levels of school administration. 22% food service budget reduction, she continued. That was Matthews' directive. Find efficiencies, he said. Other schools are doing more with less. Well, this is what efficiency looks like, Jerry. This is what happens when you demand champagne results on a beer budget. My phone battery hit 20% and switched to low power mode, dimming the screen. The footsteps were close enough now that I could hear Mr. Garcia's keys jangling on his belt loop. I had to move. Now. I army crawled backward from the storage room door, clutching my phone as Mr. Garcia's whistling grew louder. The battery dropped to 19% just as I slipped behind the lunch counter, pressing myself flat against the industrial dishwasher. Through the serving window, I watched his flashlight beam sweep across the cafeteria tables. Hello. Garcia called out. Someone there. I held my breath, praying Rodriguez and Hoffman would stay quiet. The last thing I needed was for all three of them to discover me hiding here with a phone full of incriminating recordings. Garcia's footsteps moved toward the storage area, his keys jingling with each step. I heard him try the handle, locked. He knocked twice. Food service. Anyone working late? Silence from inside. Either they were staying quiet, or they'd slipped out the back exit I hadn't noticed. After what felt like an eternity, Garcia moved on, his whistling fading as he headed toward the gymnasium. I waited another 5 minutes before creeping back to the storage room. The door was still closed, but I could hear muffled voices through the metal. They were still in there, still talking. My phone showed 18% battery, but I couldn't stop now. The Morrison kids' parents hired Kellerman and Associates, Rodriguez was saying. That's the firm that sued the district for $3 million over the asbestos thing. Christ. Hoffman's voice sounded defeated. How do you know that? I still have friends in the main office. Janet from HR called me 20 minutes ago. Apparently they're not just going after the school, they're naming specific individuals in the lawsuit. You, me, Matthews, even the district superintendent. My heart pounded. Jake Morrison's parents weren't just seeking justice, they were going nuclear. And if other families followed suit. There's something else, Rodriguez continued, her voice dropping. The Chin girl. The doctors found something in her blood work. Some kind of bacterial strain that shouldn't exist in poultry. What do you mean, shouldn't exist? I mean the CDC lab called it unusual. Said they've only seen this particular strain in research facilities. Rodriguez's voice shook slightly. Jerry, where exactly did that chicken come from? A long pause. When Hoffman spoke, his words made my blood freeze. Biosafety clearance expired on the supplier 6 months ago. I thought it was just a paperwork issue. Biosafety clearance for a poultry company? They do specialized work. Government contracts. Sometimes they dispose of research animals for pharmaceutical companies. I pressed my hand over my mouth to keep from gasping out loud. They'd fed us contaminated research animals. Whatever experiments those chickens had been subjected to, the bacterial contamination wasn't just from poor storage, it was something far worse. You fed experimental lab animals to children? Rodriguez's voice rose to a near shriek. They were supposed to be safe. The supplier assured me the meat was clean, just needed special disposal protocols. The price was so good, 40% below market rate. 40% below market because it was supposed to be incinerated, not served for lunch. Something else crashed in the storage room. Through the door crack, I watched Rodriguez's sneakers move frantically while Hoffman's boots stayed rooted in place. The bacterial strain, she continued, it's resistant to standard antibiotics. That's why the kids aren't responding to treatment like normal food poisoning cases. Antibiotic-resistant bacteria. My little brother Marcus wasn't just fighting regular food poisoning, he was battling some kind of experimental pathogen that might not respond to any treatment the doctors tried. My phone buzzed with another text from Mom, Marcus fever spiking. Doctors trying new medication. Please come soon. 17% battery. I had to get out of here, had to get this recording to someone who could help. But Rodriguez was still talking, revealing details that made everything so much worse. The other suppliers, she said quietly. The ones I've been buying from for the past 3 months. They're all connected to the same disposal network. What are you saying? I'm saying this isn't the first time, Jerry. The expired dairy from September that made 12 kids sick. That came from a veterinary research facility. The ground beef in August that we blamed on improper thawing. Animal testing lab. 3 months. She'd been serving contaminated research animals to students for 3 months, and this was just the outbreak that finally got big enough to notice. How many kids? Hoffman's voice was barely audible. Total. Maybe 200 who got sick enough to miss school. But most parents just thought it was a stomach bug. 200 children had been poisoned, and nobody knew except the 2 people standing in that storage room, and now me. My phone hit 15% and automatically dimmed further. I had maybe an hour of recording time left, but I'd heard enough to destroy both of them. The question now was how to get this evidence to the right people before Rodriguez and Hoffman could destroy the paper trail. Through the storage room door, I heard Hoffman's voice, hollow and defeated. Maria, we're not just looking at criminal charges anymore. If those kids die from experimental bacteria. They won't die, Rodriguez said quickly. They can't. The lawyer said as long as there are no fatalities, we might avoid federal prosecution. And if there are fatalities? The silence stretched so long I thought my phone had stopped recording. When Rodriguez finally answered, her words made my hands shake. Then we better hope those disposal contracts I signed were thorough about destroying evidence. The disposal contracts. My blood turned to ice as I realized what Rodriguez meant. She'd been systematically destroying evidence of the contaminated suppliers for months. While Marcus and dozens of other kids fought for their lives, she was already covering her tracks. My phone battery dropped to 14% just as I heard papers rustling inside the storage room. Through the crack under the door, I watched Rodriguez's sneakers move toward what looked like a filing cabinet. The invoices for MedWaste Solutions are in here somewhere, she muttered. If we can make those disappear. Maria, stop. Hoffman's voice cracked. The FBI will have digital records. Bank transfers, email communications, shipping manifests. You can't just shred your way out of federal charges. Watch me. A paper shredder whirred to life, drowning out their voices. I pressed my ear closer to the door, straining to hear over the mechanical grinding. How many pieces of evidence were disappearing right now while I crouched helplessly in the hallway? The shredding stopped abruptly. Jerry, I need you to call your contact at the health department. Tell them you're coming in tomorrow morning to file an amended inspection report. An amended report saying what? Saying you discovered irregularities during a follow-up visit tonight. Improper storage temperatures that developed after your original inspection. Equipment malfunction that we couldn't have predicted. I held my breath, waiting for Hoffman's response. This was the moment that would determine whether he was truly trying to come clean or if Rodriguez could still manipulate him into deeper corruption. No, he said finally. Maria, I'm done. 47 kids are in the hospital because I took your money and looked the other way. I won't file false reports to cover up experimental animal contamination. 48, Rodriguez corrected coldly. Janet texted me 5 minutes ago. Another sophomore just came in with symptoms. Emma Vasquez from your nephew's class. Emma Vasquez. I knew her. She sat behind me in English literature, always borrowing pens and sharing her notes when I missed class. Smart, funny, wanted to be a veterinarian someday. Now she was the latest victim of Rodriguez's cost-cutting scheme. And the Morrison boy's kidney function dropped again, Rodriguez continued. Doctors are talking about dialysis. His parents called Channel 7, they're doing an investigative special tomorrow night called Poisoned, inside Jefferson High's food safety crisis. My phone buzzed with a low battery warning, screen dimming to conserve power. 12% left. I had to make a choice, keep recording and risk losing everything if the battery died, or get out now and take what I had to the authorities. But Rodriguez wasn't finished revealing the scope of her cover-up. The supplier contracts expire at midnight tonight, she said. After that, MedWaste Solutions technically never existed as far as our records show. The shell company dissolves, the paper trail goes cold. You planned this, Hoffman whispered. The whole thing. You knew exactly what you were serving those kids. I planned cost savings, Rodriguez snapped. The contamination was an unfortunate side effect. But Jerry, if we handle this right, we walk away clean. The company disappears, we blame equipment failure, and everyone gets to go home to their families. What about the families of those 48 kids? What about them? Kids get food poisoning sometimes. Tragic, but not criminal if the proper procedures were followed according to official documentation. The casual cruelty in her voice made me sick. She was talking about Marcus, about Emma, about Sarich fighting for her life, like they were acceptable losses in her profit margins. Through the door crack, I watched her sneakers move toward another filing cabinet. More evidence about to disappear forever. The temperature logs from the walk-in cooler, she said. Digital records showing the real readings for the past 6 months. I need your help deleting them from the district server. I don't have that kind of access. But you know someone who does. Your buddy in IT services, what's his name, Patterson? The one who helped you bury those previous inspection reports. Patterson. Robert Patterson, the district's head of information systems. Another name to add to the growing list of people involved in this conspiracy. My phone hit 11%. I had maybe 20 minutes of recording time left, but I'd already captured enough to destroy Rodriguez, Hoffman, and potentially Patterson and Principal Matthews too. The question was whether I should risk staying longer to gather more evidence, or get out now while I still could. Because if they caught me here with this recording, I had a feeling it would disappear just like all those disposal contracts and temperature logs. And Marcus couldn't afford for this evidence to vanish into Rodriguez's shredder. The storage room fell silent except for the mechanical hum of refrigerators. I pressed my ear against the cold metal door, straining to hear what Rodriguez and Hoffman were planning next. My phone showed 10% battery, maybe 15 minutes of recording time left. Patterson owes me favors, Hoffman finally said, his voice resigned. But Maria, if we wipe those server logs, there's no going back. We're crossing into conspiracy territory. We crossed that line 8 months ago when you took the first payment, Rodriguez replied coldly. Now we're just choosing between prison and freedom. Through the crack under the door, I watched her sneakers move toward what sounded like a laptop computer. Keys clicked rapidly, she was already accessing something digital, something that could disappear with a few keystrokes. Here's what's going to happen, she continued, her voice taking on the commanding tone she used with cafeteria workers. You call Patterson tonight. Tell him there was a system glitch that corrupted the food service temperature data. Routine IT maintenance requires a complete wipe and restore from backup files, but conveniently, the backup files only go back 3 months. 3 months puts us past the August ground beef incident, Hoffman said slowly. Exactly. Clean slate from August forward. Everything before that. Deleted due to technical difficulties. I fumbled for my phone's camera app, switching from audio recording to video. If Rodriguez was accessing files right now, I needed visual evidence of the digital cover-up. The screen was almost too dim to see, but I managed to angle the camera toward the gap under the door. More typing sounds, punctuated by Rodriguez muttering numbers under her breath. September 14th, deleted. September 22nd, deleted. October 3rd. She was systematically erasing weeks of evidence while I crouched helplessly 3 feet away. The Chin girl's parents hired a private investigator, Hoffman said suddenly. Guy named Marcus Torres, former FBI agent who specializes in institutional corruption cases. My heart lurched. A private investigator with federal experience was already working the case. That meant Rodriguez and Hoffman might not have as much time to cover their tracks as they thought. How do you know that? Rodriguez's typing stopped. My wife works at the courthouse. Torres filed paperwork this afternoon requesting emergency access to all district food service records going back 2 years. Judge Hernandez signed the order an hour ago. 2 years. Rodriguez's voice cracked. That goes back to before the budget cuts, before any of this started. That's the point, Maria. He's looking for patterns. If Torres finds evidence of systematic violations dating back months, we're not just looking at negligence charges anymore. The typing resumed, faster now. Desperate. I could hear Rodriguez's breathing getting heavier as she raced to delete files before the private investigator could access them. What about the bank records? Hoffman asked. Torres will trace every payment, every unusual transaction. The $2,000 a month I've been getting, the 40% discounts from Medwaste Solutions, it's all documented. Not if the bank records show legitimate consulting fees for food safety services, Rodriguez said. I've got Patterson backdating contracts that make your payments look like official district business. Patterson wasn't just helping cover up the digital evidence, he was actively creating false documentation. The conspiracy was deeper than I'd imagined, reaching into multiple departments of the school district. My phone buzzed, another text from Mom. Marcus conscious but asking why his stomach hurts so bad. Doctor says infection spreading. Please hurry home. 9% battery. The infection was spreading in my little brother's body while these two monsters planned their escape from justice. There's one more problem, Hoffman said quietly. The CDC investigators aren't just looking at our records. They're testing the actual chicken samples from the hospital, the stuff they pumped out of those kids' stomachs. Rodriguez's typing stopped abruptly. What kind of testing? Full pathogen analysis. DNA sequencing of the bacterial strains. If that meat came from research animals like you said, the CDC lab will identify genetic markers that don't exist in normal poultry. Shit. Papers rustled frantically. How long before they get results? 24 hours, maybe less. This is a federal health emergency now, Maria. They're fast-tracking everything. 24 hours. That's how long I had to get this recording to someone who could stop them before Rodriguez and Patterson finished destroying the evidence trail. Then we accelerate the timeline, Rodriguez said grimly. I'm calling Patterson now. Tonight we wipe every server, every backup, every trace of the real data. By tomorrow morning, the official records will show perfect compliance with all safety protocols. I heard her phone dialing. In minutes, she'd be coordinating the destruction of evidence that could save Marcus and the other kids by proving exactly what they'd been poisoned with. 8% battery. It was time to go. But as I started to crawl backward from the storage room, I heard Rodriguez's voice change, surprised, alarmed. Patterson. Why aren't you answering? Call me back immediately, this is urgent. She tried again. Then again. Each call going straight to voicemail. He's not picking up, she told Hoffman, panic creeping into her voice. Maybe he's asleep. It's almost 11 o'clock. Patterson never sleeps. The man's a workaholic who answers emails at 3 in the morning. Rodriguez's sneakers paced frantically. Jerry, what if he's already been contacted? What if Torres got to him first? The possibility hung in the air like poison gas. If the private investigator had already flipped Patterson, then Rodriguez and Hoffman's entire cover-up plan was falling apart. And if Patterson was cooperating with the FBI, my recording might be the final piece of evidence needed to save every kid in that hospital. 7% battery. Time to find out. I slipped out through the cafeteria's back exit, my phone clutched against my chest like a lifeline. 7% battery and 43 minutes of the most damning evidence I'd ever heard. But as I reached my car in the empty parking lot, I realized I had no idea who to call first. The police? They'd want to verify everything through official channels that Rodriguez was busy destroying. The FBI? Good luck getting a federal agent on the phone at 11:17 p.m. The media? Channel 7 was already covering the story, but they'd need time to authenticate the recording. Time I didn't have. My phone buzzed with another text from Mom, Marcus asking for you again. Fever 104.2. They're moving him to pediatric ICU. Please come now. The pediatric ICU. That meant Marcus was getting worse, not better. Whatever experimental bacteria Rodriguez had fed him was winning. I started the engine and headed toward the hospital, but halfway there, I made a sharp turn toward downtown. There was someone who might be able to help, someone Rodriguez and Hoffman hadn't counted on. The law offices of Kellerman and Associates occupied a sleek glass building on 5th Street. Even at nearly midnight, lights blazed on the 7th floor. Jake Morrison's parents weren't just hiring lawyers, they were hiring the best, and apparently the best worked around the clock. I parked illegally and took the elevator up, my phone now at 6%. In the hallway, I could hear voices through frosted glass doors. Multiple people working late, probably preparing for what would be the biggest lawsuit in district history. Excuse me. I knocked on the main door. I'm sorry to bother you so late, but I have information about the Jefferson High food poisoning case. A woman in her 50s opened the door, her gray hair pulled back in a tired ponytail. Behind her, I could see conference rooms filled with documents and at least 6 people hunched over computers and legal pads. I'm Patricia Kellerman, she said, studying my face. You're a Jefferson student. My brother Marcus is in the ICU, I said, holding up my phone. And I just recorded the cafeteria manager and health inspector admitting to everything. The expired food, the bribes, the cover-up, it's all here. Kellerman's eyes widened. She stepped aside to let me in, calling over her shoulder, Torres. Get in here. Now. The private investigator was younger than I'd expected, maybe 40, with sharp eyes and a kind of intense focus that made me understand why Rodriguez was so scared of him. He listened to 30 seconds of my recording and immediately started making phone calls. Judge Hernandez. Sorry to wake you, but we need an emergency injunction. Yes, tonight. Digital evidence preservation order for the entire school district IT system. While Torres worked his phone, Kellerman connected mine to a laptop and started copying files. How much battery do you have left? 5%, maybe less. That's enough. We're uploading everything to secure servers with FBI-level encryption. Even if your phone dies, this evidence is preserved. A younger lawyer burst through the conference room door. Patterson's been arrested, he announced breathlessly. FBI picked him up 20 minutes ago at his house. Apparently he's been cooperating for weeks, wearing a wire, documenting everything. My heart nearly stopped. Patterson had been working with the FBI all along. Every conversation Rodriguez thought she was having in secret, every plan to destroy evidence, the feds had been recording it all. Which means, Torres said, ending his phone call with a grim smile, Rodriguez and Hoffman just walked into a trap. Federal agents are surrounding Jefferson High as we speak. Through the conference room windows, I could see police lights flashing in the distance, heading toward the school. Rodriguez and Hoffman were about to discover that their midnight evidence destruction party had become a federal sting operation. My phone finally died, but it didn't matter anymore. The recording was safe, the FBI was closing in, and Marcus was going to get the justice he deserved. But first, I had to get to the hospital. Because my little brother was still fighting for his life, and he needed to know his big sister hadn't let him down. The pediatric ICU smelled like disinfectant and fear. I found Marcus in room 314, looking impossibly small under the tangle of 4 lines and monitoring wires. His temperature had dropped to 102.8, but the dark circles under his eyes told the real story. Whatever Rodriguez had fed him was still eating him alive from the inside. Hey, buddy, I whispered, squeezing his hand. How are you feeling? Like someone filled my stomach with broken glass, he croaked. Mom said 47 kids got sick. Is that really true? 52 now, Mom said from the corner chair where she'd probably been sitting for hours. 3 more came in while you were, wherever you were. I called your phone 6 times. The guilt hit harder than I'd expected. While I was playing detective, my family was falling apart in a hospital room. But Marcus squeezed my hand with surprising strength. Did you find out what happened? Who did this to us? Before I could answer, Dr. Patel knocked and entered with a tablet in his hands. Marcus, your sister, I have some encouraging news about your test results. The experimental antibiotic cocktail seems to be working. Your white cell count has stabilized for the first time in 18 hours. Experimental antibiotics. Doctor, the bacteria Marcus was exposed to, is it resistant to normal treatment? Dr. Patel's expression grew serious. I can't discuss specific details, but I will say this strain has characteristics we don't typically see in foodborne pathogens. The CDC sent a specialist from their biocontainment unit in Atlanta. She'll be here first thing tomorrow morning. Biocontainment unit. My stomach dropped as I realized Rodriguez's contaminated research animals had been even worse than I'd imagined. Marcus wasn't just fighting food poisoning, he was battling something that required federal biocontainment protocols. There's something else, Dr. Patel continued. We've identified the source of the contamination. The chicken your school served came from animals that were being used to test experimental vaccines. When those animals were improperly disposed of, they carried modified bacterial strains designed to be antibiotic resistant. Mom went pale. You're telling me someone fed my son laboratory test animals? I'm telling you that federal investigators are treating this as a potential bioterrorism case. The supplier your school was using had contracts with 3 pharmaceutical companies conducting classified research. Bioterrorism. The word hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Rodriguez hadn't just been cutting costs, she'd been trafficking in materials that should have been incinerated under federal oversight. My phone, now plugged into a wall charger, buzzed with a text from Patricia Kellerman, Rodriguez and Hoffman in federal custody. Patterson's cooperation led to arrests of 6 district officials including Principal Matthews. Your recording triggered the biggest corruption investigation in state education history. 6 district officials. The conspiracy had reached deeper than anyone imagined, touching administrators who made decisions affecting 30,000 students across 12 schools. Marcus, I said, showing him the text, the people who did this to you are going to prison. All of them. His eyes, clearer now than they'd been in days, focused on my phone screen. Good. But what about the other kids? Emma Vasquez was in the room next door when they brought me up here. She looked really bad. Through the ICU window, I could see into room 316 where Emma lay unconscious, her parents holding vigil beside machines that beeped and hummed with mechanical precision. 52 kids were fighting the same battle as Marcus, and not all of them were winning. The FBI is working with the CDC to make sure every kid gets the right treatment, I told him. Your case is helping them understand exactly what we're all dealing with. Dar. Patel checked Marcus's 4-line. The good news is we caught the infection before it could cause permanent organ damage. Your kidney function is improving, and the experimental antibiotics are targeting the specific bacterial markers we identified. You should be able to go home in 72 hours. Home. After 3 days of thinking I might lose my little brother, that word sounded like a prayer answered. But as Dr. Patel left, my phone buzzed with another message from Torres, emergency. Rodriguez posted bail 20 minutes ago. Judge set bond despite federal charges. She's not in custody anymore. My blood turned to ice water. Rodriguez was free, which meant she was dangerous. A woman who'd poisoned 52 children and tried to cover it up wouldn't hesitate to eliminate the witness who recorded her confession. The witness who was currently sitting in a hospital room with her poisoned little brother and exhausted mother. I stared at Torres's message, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. Rodriguez was out on bail. Free to disappear, free to tie up loose ends, free to make sure the only witness to her midnight confession never made it to a courtroom. What's wrong? Mom asked, noticing my face had gone white. Before I could answer, Marcus's monitor started beeping frantically. His temperature spiked to 103.4 in less than 30 seconds, and his breathing became shallow and rapid. Nurse. Mom hit the call button repeatedly. Something's wrong. Dr. Patel rushed in with 2 nurses, checking Marcus's vitals while I stood frozen in the corner. The timing couldn't be coincidental. Rodriguez gets released, and suddenly my brother takes a turn for the worse. His bacterial levels just jumped, Dr. Patel muttered, adjusting 4 medications. This doesn't make sense. The antibiotics were working. Could someone have tampered with his treatment? I blurted out. Everyone turned to stare at me. Dr. Patel frowned. That's not possible. This is a secure ward. Only authorized medical personnel have access. But as he spoke, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The night shift nurse checking Marcus's 4 bag, I'd never seen her before. Jefferson was a small town where everyone knew everyone, especially hospital staff. This woman was a stranger. Excuse me, I said to the nurse. I don't think we've met. I'm Marcus's sister. She looked up with cold, professional eyes that seemed oddly familiar. Night shift supervisor. Just started this week. Right when 52 poisoned kids flooded the hospital. Right when someone might need inside access to ensure certain patients didn't recover enough to testify. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Stop digging or your brother's condition gets worse. Much worse. The message deleted itself 3 seconds after I read it. I grabbed Dr. Patel's arm as he adjusted Marcus's ventilator. You need to test everything, his medications, everything. Someone's trying to silence him. That's impossible, he started to say, but then he looked at my face and something in his expression shifted. Security to pediatric ICU, immediately. The unfamiliar nurse was already gone, vanished like she'd never existed. But Marcus's temperature continued climbing, 104.1, 104.6, approaching dangerous levels despite the medications that had been stabilizing him just minutes ago. Test his 4 bag, I insisted. Please. The woman who poisoned him just posted bail, and now he's suddenly getting worse. That's not a coincidence. Dr. Patel exchanged glances with the remaining nurses, then carefully removed Marcus's 4 bag for testing. If someone did tamper with this, we'll know within an hour. But right now, we need to focus on bringing his fever down. My phone rang, Torres calling from the law office. Where are you right now? Hospital. Marcus just got worse, and I think Rodriguez. Get out. Now. Rodriguez didn't just post bail, she disappeared. Cut off her ankle monitor, abandoned her car downtown. FBI thinks she's running, but I think she's hunting. Through the ICU window, I could see 2 security guards questioning staff about the missing night nurse. But Rodriguez had proven she could corrupt health inspectors, school officials, and IT administrators. How hard would it be to plant someone in a busy hospital during the biggest medical emergency in county history? I can't leave Marcus, I whispered into the phone. Then you both might die, Torres replied grimly. Because Rodriguez knows you're the only witness who can put her away forever. And desperate people do desperate things. The lights flickered in the ICU. Once, twice, then steady again. But in that moment of darkness, I saw something that made my blood freeze. A figure in scrubs watching us from the hallway. Too far away to see clearly, but something about the posture, the way she held her shoulders, reminded me of Rodriguez. Marcus squeezed my hand weakly. Don't leave me, he whispered. I wouldn't. But I also wouldn't let Rodriguez finish what she'd started. The security footage from the hospital's main entrance showed Rodriguez entering at 11:43 p.m., 47 minutes before Marcus's condition deteriorated. She'd used a stolen ID badge from Janet Morrison, Jake's aunt who worked in hospital administration. The same Janet who'd been feeding Rodriguez information about the lawsuits and FBI investigation. She's still in the building, Torres said through my phone speaker as Dr. Patel worked to stabilize Marcus's fever. FBI is coordinating with hospital security to lock down every exit, but this place has 18 different ways out including service tunnels and emergency exits. Marcus's temperature had peaked at 105.2 before the new 4 medications started bringing it down. Whatever Rodriguez had introduced into his system was fighting the antibiotics, but Dr. Patel seemed confident they could counteract it. The good news, he said, checking Marcus's latest blood work, is that we caught the tampering quickly. She injected concentrated bacteria culture into his 4 line, probably took it from one of the original contaminated samples. But since we know exactly what we're dealing with now, we can target it specifically. How long before he's stable? I asked, watching my brother's pale face as he drifted in and out of consciousness. 6 hours, maybe 8. The experimental antibiotics are stronger now that we've isolated the exact bacterial strain. Dr. Patel glanced toward the hallway where FBI agents were interviewing staff. Your brother's going to be fine, but Rodriguez made a crucial mistake by coming here. What kind of mistake? She left biological evidence everywhere. DNA on the 4 bag, fingerprints on medical equipment, security footage showing her face clearly. Even if she escapes tonight, she's finished. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, loading Doc B, sublevel 3. Come alone or 20 more kids get sick tomorrow. The message included a photo of Rodriguez standing next to industrial refrigerators filled with what looked like prepackaged school lunches. She'd apparently stockpiled enough contaminated food to poison the entire district. She's got more, I told Torres, showing him the text. Enough to make this outbreak look small. Torres swore under his breath. The FBI will be there in 10 minutes, but she'll be gone by then. She's using you as bait to buy escape time. Then what choice do I have? I looked at Marcus, finally sleeping peacefully as his fever broke. If she has enough contaminated food to sicken hundreds more kids. You stay here, Mom said firmly from her chair beside Marcus's bed. You've done enough. Let the FBI handle this. But my phone buzzed again, 5 minutes or I start making deliveries to Roosevelt Elementary. 847 students eating lunch tomorrow. Roosevelt Elementary. Where my 10-year-old cousin Sophia was in 4th grade, along with hundreds of other little kids who'd never survived the kind of bacterial infection that had nearly killed Marcus. Dr. Patel must have seen something in my expression because he grabbed my arm. Whatever you're thinking, don't. Rodriguez is desperate and dangerous. She's already tried to murder your brother, she won't hesitate to hurt you. But she needs me alive long enough to escape, I reasoned. I'm her insurance policy. You're also the only witness who can testify about what you overheard in that storage room, Torres reminded me through the phone. If something happens to you, Rodriguez might beat half these charges. Through the ICU window, I could see FBI agents coordinating with hospital security. They were setting up a perimeter, checking every room and corridor. But Rodriguez had been planning this escape for hours while they'd been scrambling to catch up. Marcus stirred, his eyes opening slightly. Where are you going? He whispered. Nowhere, I lied, squeezing his hand. Just getting some air. Don't do anything stupid, he said with a weak smile. I need my big sister around to help me sue these bastards. Even semi-conscious and fighting experimental bacteria, Marcus could still make me laugh. I love you too, pest. I kissed his forehead and headed for the elevator, ignoring Mom's protests and Torres's warnings through my phone. Loading dock B was 3 floors down and probably crawling with FBI agents by now. But Rodriguez was right about one thing, I couldn't risk her poisoning elementary school kids to cover her escape. The elevator descended past the main floor, past the basement parking garage, to sublevel 3 where the hospital service areas hummed with mechanical noise. The loading dock was at the end of a long concrete corridor lined with pipes and electrical conduits. And standing beside a refrigerated truck marked, Fresh Foods Catering, Rodriguez waited with her insurance policy, 20 industrial containers of what looked like pre-prepared chicken sandwiches scheduled for delivery to 3 elementary schools in the morning. Smart girl, she called out as I approached. Though not smart enough to bring backup. The FBI is already surrounding this place, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. You'll never make it out. Rodriguez laughed bitterly. Maybe not. But if I'm going down, I'm taking as many people with me as possible. Starting with every kid who eats lunch tomorrow at Roosevelt, Washington, and Lincoln Elementary. She gestured toward the containers of contaminated food, each one labeled with delivery instructions for morning arrival. 847 students at Roosevelt, 623 at Washington, 511 at Lincoln. Nearly 2,000 little kids who had no idea they were about to become casualties in Rodriguez's war against justice. What do you want? I asked. Simple. You're going to call that private investigator and tell him you made up the recording. Desperate girl trying to help her sick brother, willing to lie to get someone blamed for a tragic accident. No one will believe that. The FBI has Patterson's testimony, the digital evidence, the bank records. The FBI has a low-level IT guy's word against a food service professional with 20 years of experience. Without your recording, they've got no direct evidence of the bribery or the intentional contamination. She was right. Patterson could testify about helping to cover things up, but only I had recorded Rodriguez actually admitting to serving expired, recalled meat and bribing the health inspector. And if I don't recant? Rodriguez smiled coldly and opened the nearest container, revealing hundreds of sandwiches that looked perfectly normal but carried the same bacterial cocktail that had nearly killed Marcus. Then tomorrow morning, instead of 52 sick kids, we'll have over 2,000. And some of them won't be as lucky as your little brother. The concrete walls of the loading dock seemed to close in around me as Rodriguez opened another container, the smell of contaminated chicken filling the air. My phone showed 12:47 a.m. In less than 7 hours, delivery trucks would carry death to nearly 2,000 elementary school kids. You have 30 seconds to decide, Rodriguez said, pulling out her own phone. Call Torres and recant, or I make one phone call and these deliveries go out on schedule. The FBI will intercept the trucks, I said desperately. Will they? These containers are labeled as emergency food relief for the hospital cafeteria. Completely legitimate deliveries that will bypass any roadblocks. She gestured toward official-looking paperwork taped to each container. My friend Janet Morrison has been very helpful with the hospital's purchasing department credentials. Janet Morrison. Jake's aunt who'd been feeding Rodriguez inside information. Even facing federal charges, Rodriguez still had people willing to help her escape. My phone buzzed with a text from Torres, FBI teams in position. Keep her talking. We're tracking your location. But Rodriguez wasn't stupid. She'd chosen the loading dock because it connected directly to service tunnels that ran beneath 3 city blocks. Even if the FBI surrounded the hospital, she had multiple escape routes they'd never find in time. The kids at Roosevelt Elementary, I said, stalling for time. Some of them are barely 5 years old. They can't survive what Marcus went through. That's not my problem anymore, Rodriguez replied coldly. I tried to cut corners quietly, make everyone happy. Save the district money, keep my job, help kids get decent meals. But you had to play detective. You had to stick your nose where it didn't belong. You poisoned 52 children. I provided cost-effective nutrition solutions during a budget crisis. The contamination was an unforeseeable accident that I tried to handle professionally until you started recording private conversations. Even now, facing federal charges and holding 2,000 kids hostage, Rodriguez was spinning her crimes as administrative efficiency gone wrong. The woman had no conscience left. Through the loading dock security mesh, I could see shadows moving in the service corridor. FBI agents getting into position, probably listening to every word through my phone's open line to Torres. 20 seconds, Rodriguez said, finger hovering over her phone screen. Call Torres now, or I send a signal for emergency food delivery to 3 schools. My hands shook as I raised my phone, but instead of calling Torres, I opened the camera app and started recording again. If this went badly, someone needed proof of what Rodriguez was threatening. You're making a mistake, she said, noticing the camera. Those kids' blood will be on your hands, not mine. No, I said, finding strength I didn't know I had. Their blood is already on your hands. All of it. Marcus, Emma, Sarah Chen, Jake Morrison, every kid fighting for their life right now because you chose money over their safety. Rodriguez's finger moved toward her phone screen, but she never got the chance to press it. FBI agents burst through 3 different entrances simultaneously, tactical lights cutting through the dim loading dock like lasers. Federal agents. Hands where we can see them. Rodriguez spun toward the nearest service tunnel, but Agent Chin, Sarah's older sister, I realized with shock, was already blocking that exit with her weapon drawn. It's over, Maria, Agent Chin said quietly. Step away from the food containers and put your hands behind your head. For a moment, Rodriguez looked like she might run anyway. Her eyes darted between escape routes, calculating odds, measuring distances. But 20 federal agents with automatic weapons didn't leave much room for calculation. You have no idea what you've cost me, Rodriguez snarled as they cuffed her. 20 years of service to ungrateful kids and penny-pinching administrators. I deserved better than this. You deserved exactly this, I replied, still recording as they led her away. The contaminated food containers would be destroyed under CDC supervision, the elementary schools would get safe meals, and Rodriguez would never poison another child. But looking at my phone's recording of her final threat, I knew this nightmare was far from over. Because Rodriguez had mentioned other people, other schools, other cost-cutting measures that might still be happening right now. The FBI raid made headlines, but 3 days later, sitting in another sterile conference room at Kellerman and Associates, I learned the Rodriguez case was just the beginning. Torres spread documents across the mahogany table like he was dealing cards in the world's most disturbing poker game. 17 school districts, he said, pointing to a map dotted with red pins. All using the same contaminated supplier network Rodriguez discovered. Med Waste Solutions had contracts with 43 schools across 3 states. My stomach dropped. How many kids? Potentially. Over 30,000 students served contaminated research animals in the past 8 months. Most cases were written off as stomach flu or seasonal illness because the outbreaks were smaller, more spread out. Patricia Kellerman looked up from a thick file marked, classified, CDC Biocontainment Unit. The bacterial strain that infected Marcus and the other Jefferson students. It's been identified in 11 other mass poisoning incidents since February. Always the same pattern, expired research animals sold as discount meat to cash-strapped school districts. Agent Chin, who joined our legal team after Rodriguez's arrest, pulled up surveillance photos on her laptop. Rodriguez was small-time compared to this operation. The supplier network generated over $2 million by selling experimental waste that should have been incinerated under federal oversight. $2 million. Blood money earned by poisoning children who trusted the adults supposed to protect them. There's something else, Torres said grimly. The pharmaceutical companies whose research animals were being diverted. 3 of them are owned by the same parent corporation. Gentech Industries has been disposing of experimental subjects through MedWaste for 2 years, claiming full incineration while actually selling the meat through shell companies. I stared at the corporate logo on Torres's documents. Gentech Industries, I'd seen their name on medicine bottles in Marcus's hospital room. The same company that created experimental antibiotics to save my brother had also created the bacterial infection that nearly killed him. That's not coincidental, Agent Chin said, following my gaze. Gentech developed the antibiotic treatment specifically because they knew their experimental bacteria would eventually surface in the food supply. They've been profiting from both the contamination and the cure. My hands clenched into fists. They poisoned kids on purpose. To test their medications. Not exactly, Torres replied carefully. They disposed of research animals through what they thought was a legitimate waste management company. But when MedWaste started selling the meat instead of incinerating it, Gentech didn't report the breach. They saw it as an opportunity to study their experimental bacteria in real-world conditions. Using children as test subjects, Kellerman said flatly. Without consent, without oversight, without regard for safety protocols, Agent Chin confirmed. When the first outbreak started appearing in February, Gentech's research division began tracking the cases. They have detailed files on every infected student, including Marcus. She opened another folder, and my blood turned to ice. Marcus's medical record stared back at me, his temperature charts, bacterial cultures, response to treatment. All documented in Gentech's private database labeled, Field Study Subjects, Pediatric Infection Response. They've been studying Marcus this whole time, I whispered. Watching him suffer to see how their bacteria worked. And now they're trying to cover it up, Torres added. 4 Gentech executives fled the country yesterday. FBI seized their servers this morning, but most of the digital evidence was already destroyed. I thought about Marcus, finally home from the hospital but still weak, still fighting lingering effects of the experimental infection. He trusted me to get justice for what had been done to him. For what had been done to all of them. What about the other schools? I asked. The 30,000 kids who might have been infected? Agent Chen's expression darkened. That's where we need your help again. Because Rodriguez wasn't the only food service manager taking bribes. The FBI identified 14 others still operating, still serving contaminated meat to students who don't know they're being poisoned. 14 more schools. Thousands more children at risk while their families trusted institutional lunch programs to keep them safe. Torres slid a new phone across the table toward me. We need someone Rodriguez's network still trusts. Someone who can get close enough to record them admitting to the ongoing contamination. The new phone felt like a loaded weapon in my hands. You want me to go undercover? I'm 17 years old. I'm not a federal agent. No, Torres said, but you're something better. You're a victim with a legitimate reason to be angry at the system. Rodriguez's network thinks she's in hiding, not in federal custody. They don't know her operation was compromised. Agent Chen opened her laptop and showed me surveillance footage of a middle-aged woman in a Riverside High cafeteria uniform loading boxes into a delivery truck. Meet Sandra Walsh, food service manager at Riverside High. She's been Rodriguez's main contact for sharing supplier information. Yesterday, she ordered 300 pounds of the same recalled chicken that put Marcus in the hospital. 300 pounds meant at least 600 students at risk. Kids who'd eat lunch today not knowing they were consuming experimental bacteria designed to test antibiotic resistance. Walsh thinks Rodriguez escaped clean, Torres continued. She's panicking about FBI attention but doesn't know how much we actually know. If someone reached out claiming to have information about safe disposal of evidence, she'd meet with them, I finished. But what if she recognizes me from news coverage? Kellerman pulled up local news footage from the hospital raid. Channel 7 never showed your face clearly, and the newspapers only used your first name. To Walsh, you're just another angry sister looking to blame someone for her brother's hospitalization. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus, feeling better today. Doctor says infection markers dropping. When do I get to sue these bastards for my college fund? Even recovering from bioengineered food poisoning, my little brother was thinking about justice. I owed him more than just Rodriguez behind bars. I owed him a system that would never poison another kid for profit. What exactly would I have to do? I asked. Agent Chen slid a folder across the table. Walsh is meeting a new supplier tonight at 7 p.m. Warehouse District on Industrial Boulevard. We need recordings of her negotiating for more contaminated meat, proof she knows exactly what she's serving to students. And if something goes wrong, 12 FBI agents will be positioned within 2 blocks of the meeting site, Torres assured me. You'll have backup, surveillance, and extraction protocols. But honestly, Walsh isn't violent like Rodriguez. She's just greedy and scared. I opened the folder and studied Walsh's profile. 23 years in school food service, 2 daughters in college, mortgage payments that consumed 60% of her salary. The same financial pressures that probably drove Rodriguez to accept contaminated meat at discount prices. The supplier she's meeting, I said, reading further, Marcus Chen from BioWaste Solutions. Any relation to Agent Chen? My cousin, Agent Chen admitted. Former Gentech researcher who's been cooperating with the investigation for 6 weeks. He'll be wearing a wire too, so you'll have double coverage. Double coverage meant double evidence, but it also meant twice as many things that could go wrong. If Walsh suspected either of us was working with the FBI, she'd disappear like 3 other food service managers had already done. There's something else, Kellerman said quietly. The blood tests came back from the other 17 districts. We found Genteca's experimental bacteria in archived samples going back 8 months. Conservative estimate. Over 4,000 children have been exposed to varying levels of contamination. 4,000 kids. Some might not even know they've been infected yet. The bacteria could stay dormant for weeks before triggering symptoms. How long do we have before Walsh serves her next batch of contaminated food? Torres checked his watch. Lunch service starts at Riverside High in 11 hours. If we don't stop tonight's delivery, 600 more students eat experimental bacteria tomorrow. 600 kids who trusted their school to keep them safe. 600 families who had no idea their children were being used as test subjects by a pharmaceutical company that saw profit in poison. I picked up the new phone and started memorizing the surveillance protocols Agent Chen had outlined. What time do I need to be there? 6:47 p.m. at the Industrial Boulevard warehouse. I sat in my car watching Sandra Walsh pace nervously beside a refrigerated truck. Agent Chen's cousin Marcus had arrived 10 minutes early, his own recording equipment hidden in a clipboard that looked completely normal. 12 FBI agents were positioned around the building, invisible but ready. My phone buzzed with a final text from Torres. Remember, we need her to admit she knows the meat is contaminated and that she's intentionally serving it to students. Get specifics, dates, quantities, which schools. Walsh looked exactly like her surveillance photos, tired, stressed, constantly checking her phone. When Marcus approached with his clipboard, she nearly jumped out of her skin. You're late, she snapped, though he was actually 3 minutes early. Traffic, Marcus replied smoothly, activating his hidden recorder. You said you needed 300 pounds of poultry for tomorrow's lunch service. 300 pounds of the special discounted meat, Walsh corrected, glancing around nervously. The same grade that Maria Rodriguez was getting from Medwaste Solutions before she disappeared. There it was, direct acknowledgement that she knew about Rodriguez's contaminated supplier network. I started my own recording and crept closer, using shipping containers as cover. About Rodriguez, Marcus said carefully, her situation has some people concerned about continued operations. Are you comfortable with the risk level? Walsh's laugh was bitter. Comfortable? Hell no. But my mortgage payment is $1,500 a month, I've got 2 kids in college, and the district cut our food budget by 30% this year. Rodriguez showed me how to serve decent meals without going bankrupt. Even knowing the health department recalls. The recalls are just liability protection for the pharmaceutical companies, Walsh said, repeating Rodriguez's lies word for word. That meat was perfectly safe when stored properly. Besides, these kids eat garbage at home, McDonald's, frozen dinners, gas station pizza. A little extra bacteria just builds character. I had to bite my tongue to keep from screaming. She was talking about deliberately poisoning children while convincing herself it was somehow good for them. Marcus opened his clipboard, revealing sample containers. This batch came from Genteca's primate research facility. Experimental vaccine trials, terminated last Tuesday. Same bacterial markers that caused the Jefferson High outbreak. Perfect, Walsh said without hesitation. How many students got sick from Jefferson? Final count was 68 hospitalized, 12 in critical condition. Walsh nodded approvingly. But no deaths, right? That's the sweet spot, sick enough that parents blame the kids' weak stomachs, not sick enough to trigger major investigations. My hands shook with rage as I recorded every word. She wasn't just poisoning children for money, she was calibrating the poisoning to avoid accountability. Payment terms? Marcus asked. Same as Rodriguez, $2,000 up front, $1,000 after successful delivery. Cash only. Walsh pulled out an envelope stuffed with bills. This batch goes to Riverside High tomorrow, Washington Middle School Thursday, Roosevelt Elementary Friday. 3 schools. Over 1,500 students scheduled to consume experimental bacteria over the next 4 days. And if anyone gets sick? Walsh shrugged. Blame it on seasonal stomach flu. Works every time. Sirens wailed in the distance as FBI vehicles surrounded the warehouse. Agent Chen's voice echoed through a megaphone, federal agents. Sandra Walsh, you're under arrest for conspiracy to distribute contaminated food products. Walsh dropped the money and ran, but she made it exactly 12 feet before federal agents tackled her to the asphalt. As they cuffed her, she screamed about unfair prosecution and financial hardship, never once mentioning the children she planned to poison. Back home 2 hours later, Marcus was waiting in the kitchen with hot chocolate and his biggest smile in weeks. Channel 7 says they arrested 6 more food service managers tonight, he announced proudly. My big sister is officially a hero. We're all heroes, I corrected, hugging him tight. Every kid who survived, every family who fought back, every FBI agent who cared enough to stop this. The final arrests came at dawn: 14 food service managers, 6 district administrators, 3 pharmaceutical executives, and Rodriguez herself, whose federal charges now included conspiracy, bioterrorism, and racketeering. Gentech Industries faced criminal prosecution and civil lawsuits totaling $2 billion. Most importantly, the contaminated food supply was eliminated forever, and 30,000 children would never again unknowingly consume experimental bacteria with their lunch. Marcus squeezed my hand as we watched the morning news coverage. Think any other schools are still cutting corners with food safety? I smiled, remembering Torres's promise that the FBI had created a permanent task force to monitor institutional food suppliers. If they are, they won't be for long. Justice, it turned out, was the best medicine of all.